In today's video, we're going to create the portal system, which allows us to add portals into our game, and when a player touches one of those portals, they'll be teleported to a brand new Roblox game. So we can see that I have 3 portals set up in front of me, each leading to a different game. Then when I walk inside of one of them, we can see that my screen freezes and I'm teleported directly over to that experience. Now, before we begin, in order to save us a lot of time, we're actually going to be starting off by using my own personal game template, which I'll leave a link down below in the description to. Once you visit this link on the game page, you're able to click the 3 dots right here and then click Edit in Studio. And then that should open up the game directly inside of Roblox Studio for you. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this game template, essentially it includes the module framework, which allows us to write all of our logic inside of module scripts, a UI scaling script, which will automatically scale UIs to all device sizes, the profile service for easily managing and handling players' data, and maybe 1 or 2 other libraries, which just makes creating our games significantly easier. Now, even if you're completely unaware of what any of those systems are, none of those are very important to this episode, but if you're wanting to learn more about those systems, I'll leave a link down below in the description to about a 3-part series where you can learn all the specifics about each of those systems. So feel free to go ahead and check those out once you're finished this video. Anyways, now that we have the Roblox game template, in addition to the Roblox game template, unless you have your own portal model, you're going to want to go ahead and get the free portal model that I actually offer in one of my own model packs on my website. There will also be a link down below in the description to this. Again, this is completely free and it doesn't even require you to create an account. All you have to do is go to this page, click on the download button, save the zip file somewhere, and then you've downloaded the pack. And since we've downloaded the zip file, you're going to want to go ahead and extract that so that you can view all of the models that are inside of there. Once you've extracted it, you should see a couple of files inside of the folder just like this. The only file or model that we actually care about is the portal one right here. So to implement that into our game, we're going to go back inside of Roblox Studio. Then we're going to want to go to our Explorer and right click on the workspace. You should then see Insert Part, Insert Object, or Insert from File, which we're going to want to go ahead and use that option. Then we're going to want to go to where all those models are stored at. And then we're going to want to go ahead and select the portal model and click on Open. Once we do that, we should see the portal has been added to our workspace. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move this over a little bit just so that it's by our spawn location. Cool. So now if we want to take a quick look inside of the portal model, inside of this model, we have another model, which is called Rocks, and that's just kind of the outer border of the actual portal. And then we have a couple of other mesh parts inside of here. Now, essentially, the setup of this model doesn't really matter. The most important thing is probably the primary part being set, and that is actually set to the portal mesh part inside of here, and that's automatically done. So if you're using this exact model, it's going to work the exact same way because that's how I have it set up. But essentially, we want the model's primary part to be set to something which is effectively the same size as the portal itself, because we're going to use this part to detect when a player touches it, and then once the player touches this part, we're going to teleport them to a brand new game. So that's why we want to make sure that the primary part property is actually set to a part that's relatively the same size as the portal or the portal touch part sort of a thing. Now, next what we're going to do is begin by creating a GUI. Now, when it comes to creating any GUIs, what I first like to do is enable device emulation. So we're going to go to the test tab. In the emulation section, we're going to go ahead and click on device. And then the device that we want to set this to is usually the desktop HD 1080. And then for the mode, we're usually liking to set that to fit to window. Now that we've done that, what we're going to do is inside of the portal part, inside of the portal model, we're going to go ahead and create a brand new Billboard GUI. Now, we're going to rename this Billboard GUI to actually be called Portal GUI. And then inside of this GUI, we're going to go ahead and add in a frame. And now we can actually kind of see the GUI a little bit. Now, going back to the portal GUI, what we're going to want to do is we're first going to adjust the light influence property. And we're going to set that from 1 down to 0 because we don't want the light to influence this GUI at all. Then for the max distance, I'm going to set this to about 30 so that the player has to be within 30 studs to actually see it. I'm then going to set reset on spawn to false. For the size on both the X and the Y scale, we're going to set them to 3. And then we're going to want to take a look at the studs offset world space. And on either the X or the Z, depending on where your portal is actually positioned at, you're going to want to adjust this to about 5 or -5. So I'll first try to do this on X, and I'll set this to -5. And when I set that to -5, we can see that it did move that to the specific direction that we want to. So we sort of just want this GUI to appear in front of where the portal is positioned at. Now, if your portal was rotated or positioned differently, like I said, you might have to adjust the X to 5 or -5 so that it appears more towards the right or left-hand side. But -5 5 in the x-axis works perfectly for us, so I'm just going to leave it as is. Next, let's go ahead and work on the frame. Ultimately, the only thing that we're going to change with the frame is the size of this, and we're going to set both the x and the y scale to 1 because we wanted to stretch the entire width and height of the Billboard Gui. And boom, there we go. We've got a nice large square. Then inside of this frame, we're going to go ahead and add in a brand new text label. With this text label, we're going to go ahead and rename it to be called title. And for the text of this, we're going to just go ahead and say visit. Then for the text color, I'm actually going to go with a white. We're going to set the text to be scaled. Now, normally I don't actually use text scaled, but when it comes to Billboard GUIs, I actually prefer to use text scaled in order to avoid the text kind of stretching a lot. And then what we're going to want to do is update the font, which I'm going to go ahead and change to about for Doka 1. And I might even make it a little bit bold. Then for the background transparency, we're going to set that to 1 so we don't see the background. And then inside of this text label, we're actually going to go ahead and add in a UI stroke to this. Then for the stroke, we want to adjust the thickness property to be about 3. Maybe you want it to be a little bit larger. I would go about between 3 to 5. Then for the line join mode, we're going to set it to miter. Then going back to the title text property, we're going to want to go ahead and adjust the size of this. And because this is inside of a Billboard GUI, we're again going to want to use scale for the size of this text label. So on the x-axis, we pretty much want it to be the entire width. So we'll go ahead and set the scale to 1. And then for the y-axis, we want this to take up about 1/4 of the height. So we'll go ahead and set that to 0.25, just like that. And now we can see the text is looking pretty good. Again, though, if you're not a fan of that, you might want to increase the UI stroke a little bit. And I think actually increasing that to about 5 makes it look even better. Now, after the title text label, inside of the frame, we're going to want to go ahead and add in a brand new image label. We'll go ahead and rename this image label to be called Game Icon. And along with adding that image label into this, we'll also go ahead and add in a UI list layout as well. Now, first we'll go ahead and adjust the UI list layout. For the horizontal alignment, we actually want that to be center. And then for the padding on the offset, we're going to go ahead and give the game icon and the title about 15 pixels of padding. So going back to the game icon, first we're going to go ahead and adjust the size. We want to use scale for this size, and we're going to go with about 0.5 on both the X and the Y scale. Then for the scale type property, we want to change this from stretch down to fit. Then the final thing that we pretty much want to do with this is actually adjust the background transparency from 0 to 1 so that we don't see the background. And then what we're going to do is duplicate the UI stroke that's stored inside of our title text label. And we can duplicate the UI stroke by hitting Control and D. And then we'll go ahead and drag the duplicated stroke into the game icon itself. Now, you may want to decrease the UI stroke here a tiny bit. Maybe you want to go down to 4, maybe you want to go down to 3, or you leave it at 5. Either way, it's your choice, whatever looks best to you. But now we've added a UI stroke to the game icon, we are pretty much finished with setting up this entire GUI for the most part. The last thing that we need to do is set the background transparency of the frame to 1 so that we don't see any background. And now, looking at this Billboard GUI, I think it's actually looking pretty good. And of course, we do actually need to insert an image here, but we'll do that using a script once our game has started up. Cool. So now that we're finished with the Portal GUI, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select the Portal GUI and then just drag that into the replicated storage. Now that we set up the GUI, the next thing that we're going to want to do is set up the individual portals. So inside of our workspace, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go ahead and create a brand new folder. We'll go ahead and rename this folder to be called Portals. And then we'll go ahead and store all of our portal models inside of the portals folder. Now, when it comes to naming the portal models themselves, the name of them doesn't really matter. You could literally name them Portal 1, Portal 2, Portal 3, Portal 4, or I think it's a little bit more organized. I would probably name the individual portal models after the game in which we're going to teleport the player to. But either way, when it comes to naming the models, it literally is all just for our own organization. So it's not like other people are going to see these names or those names are going to be relevant in any other way. Now, in order to teleport players to other games, we're going to need two very important things. First, we're going to need the game's place ID, which is the easiest ID to access ourselves, and we need that ID to be able to teleport the player to that place. And additionally, using the place ID, it'll actually allow us to get the game's universe ID. And then by using the universe ID, we're actually able to get the game icon image for our game icon image label. Now, getting a place ID is extremely simple. What you're going to want to do is go to the game's page that you're wanting to get the ID of. So for instance, let's just say that I wanted to teleport players from my game to the Doors game. I'm going to go to the Doors page, and then inside of the URL is actually where the place ID is stored at. So we can see a couple of numbers right here. We're going to go ahead and highlight them and copy them. Then we'll go back to Roblox Studio. We'll select the portal that we're going to use to teleport players to that game. Then I'm going to go ahead and just rename the portal to make it easier for our organization. So I've renamed this to be called Doors. Then inside of the model's properties, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go all the way down to attributes. click the little plus icon, change the type of the attribute to be a number, and then name the attribute place ID. Now we can see that that attribute has been added to here, and then we're going to want to go ahead and paste the number into there as well. Cool, so now we have the place ID. Next, we need to go ahead and get the universe ID. Now, to get the universe ID from the place ID, what you're going to want to do is go down below in the description of this video, and inside of there, there's going to be a link to one of Roblox's API pages. So the link is literally going to be apis.roblox.com, and then some things after it. But essentially, once you open up this link, you're going to want to modify the link yourself and replace the place ID that's inside of the URL with the place ID that you're wanting to get the universe ID for. So for instance, inside of this URL right here, I use the place ID of the Doors game, and now I can see the universe ID of the Doors game as well. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the universe ID. Then I'm going to go back inside of Studio, select our Doors model, go to the attributes, click the plus icon, set the type to number, and then I'm going to go ahead and call this attribute universe ID. And now that we've added that attribute there, let's go ahead and paste in the universe ID directly to that attribute. And now we have the Doors portal completely set up. Cool. Now let's go ahead and set up one other portal for one other game. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate one of these portals, move one of them over, and then I'm actually going to go ahead and just recolor one of these portals real fast so that we can kind of easily differentiate between the two. So we'll set one of these to be red and the other to be green. And then remember, whenever you duplicate a part, all the attributes and pretty much every single thing comes along with it. So I'm going to go back to the green one and start working on this and adding a new game to this one. So on Roblox, I'm going to select any game that I want to teleport my players to. Let's go ahead and select Skibidi Tower Defense. Cool. So once I'm on the game page, we can see the place ID right here. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Then I'll swap over to my apis.roblox.com tab. And then inside of here is where I'll go ahead and paste the place ID to get the universe ID. Cool. Now we have the universe ID right here. Let's go back into Roblox Studio. I'm going to go ahead and rename our door model to be called Skibidi Tower Defense. And then I'm going to go down to the attributes. For the place ID, I'll go ahead and paste in the place ID. Then I'll go ahead and grab the universe ID. And for the universe ID, I'll go ahead and paste in the universe ID. And cool. There we go. Now we have that portal set up as well. Awesome. So we've now got two portals set up, and pretty much the only thing that's left for us to do is actually begin scripting. Well, I'm kind of wrong. Before we begin scripting, there's also one more thing that we want to do, but this is very simple. What we're going to want to do is actually publish this game because we need to enable a specific setting inside of the game settings to be able to teleport players from our games to other games. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this game. We can do that by going to File, clicking Publish to Roblox As. I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new game. I'm just going to go ahead and call this game Portal Video. The rest of this stuff really doesn't matter. I'm just going to go ahead and click on Create. Cool. Now we've created and published the game. Let's go to the game settings. We're going to want to go down to Security. Now, usually I like to allow HTTP requests and enable Studio access to API services, but the most important thing for this video is that we actually allow third-party teleports. So by enabling, players can be teleported to other games. So that's why we want to enable that, and then go ahead and click on Save. Awesome. And now that we've done all of that, we can go ahead and finally begin scripting. Now, when it comes to scripting this, it's actually really simple to script this. And all the scripting that we're going to be doing is going to be written for the server side. So none of this is client-sided. And the most important reason why we cannot do this on the client side is because players cannot actually use the teleport service API to teleport them from one game to another game. Although I kind of find this a little weird or surprising because I feel like it would kind of make sense for clients to want to just teleport themselves to a different game. But yeah, I don't know. There's probably some valid security reason why Roblox prevents this or only allows it to work on the server side. But with that being said, let's get into scripting this. So inside of the server script service, inside of the services folder, we're going to go ahead and add in a brand new module script, which we're going to rename to be called Portals Service. Then inside of here, there's a very specific way that I like to do all of my modules. So we're going to go ahead and create a variable called local. We'll set that equal to a blank table. Then I'll create a variable called shared, set that to a blank table, and then we'll go ahead and return the shared table. Then towards the top of this module script, we're going to want to go ahead and get a couple of different services. The first service that we're going to want to go ahead and get is the player service. So we'll say game get service players. Then in addition to the player service, we also want to get 3 other services. The next one is going to be the replicated storage. Then we want to get the teleport service. And finally, we want to go ahead and get the workspace service. Cool. So now we've gotten all of those services. The next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and actually create a variable for the portals folder that's inside of our workspace. And we're actually going to add this to the local table because no other module which requires this service should need to access the portals folder. So we'll say portals folder equals, and we'll set that to the workspace.portals, which is the folder inside of our workspace. Then what we're going to do is go ahead and create a function, a part of the local table, which is going to be called setup portals. And it's not going to have any parameters. Now, whenever we call this function, what we're going to do is we're going to want to iterate through all the portals inside of the portals folder and set up those individual portals. So we're going to say for underscore comma portal, which we can specify the type of this to be a model, because we know as we iterate through all the children inside of the portals folder, those will all be models that we're working with. So we'll say in local.portals folder get children do. And then as we iterate through each of the portals, we'll go ahead and set them up. Now, rather than writing all of the logic inside of there, we're actually going to go ahead and create a brand new function. So we'll go ahead and say function local.setupPortal. So this time it just won't be plural. And this is going to have a single parameter, which is going to be called portal, and that's going to be of the model type. Okay, so now this is where like 90% of our logic is actually going to come in at. In order to set up a portal, what we're going to do is kind of create some prerequisite variables. So first, we're going to go ahead and create a variable for the primary part of the model. And we can do that by saying portal.primaryPart. Then we're going to want to go ahead and create a variable for the place ID. And now to get the place ID, what we're going to do is say portal, then we're going to use the method called getAttribute, and the specific attribute that we want to get is called place ID. Then we want to go ahead and create a variable for the universe ID. And to get that, we're going to get it the exact same way. Of course, instead of trying to get the place ID though, this time we want to try to get the universe ID. Now, if we're unable to find the place ID, then what we're going to want to do is go ahead and print something out. And what we're going to print out is portal, then we'll say portal.name has no place ID attribute. And we're kind of just adding this print message here to give ourselves a warning message and let us know that maybe we forgot to add in a place ID for this portal. And then what we're going to want to do after we print that out is return in order to stop this function from running any further. Otherwise, some errors will be thrown and that could prevent all of our other portals from actually being set up. Now, we actually want to do the same thing if it does not have a universe ID. So we'll say if not universe ID, then, and then what we're going to do is we'll just go ahead and copy these two lines of code. Instead of saying that the portal has no place ID though, we'll say it has no universe ID. And there we go. That's just a little bit of kind of error handling or error prevention right there, because you never know when you might make a mistake and forget to add it to that. Now, next what we're going to want to do is go ahead and actually set up the GUI for each of the individual portals. So we're going to go ahead and create a variable called GUI, which is going to be equal to the GUI that we created earlier and then stored inside of the replicated storage. So we'll say replicated storage.portal GUI. Then we're going to want to go ahead and clone that. Now that we've cloned this, we're first going to want to go ahead and parent that to the portal GUI so that we can actually see it. So we'll do this by saying GUI.parent equals, and then we'll set that to the primary part of the portal. Then we're going to want to go ahead and update the image label inside of the GUI to display the actual game icon of the game. So we can do this by saying GUI.frame.gameIcon.image equals. And now for the image ID, we're actually going to be using kind of more of a unique string, which you may not be familiar with, but just follow along with me. What we're going to say is RBX, then the word thumb. So THUMB, then a colon, then a //, then we'll say type equals, and then we'll say game icon, then an and symbol, then we'll say ID equals, and then we need to specify the universe ID. So we'll include in the brackets here, the universe ID. Then we'll say and then use a W and say equals 150. So that's saying that the width that we want to get for this image is 150. And then we'll use another and symbol and we'll say H equals, and now we'll specify the height that we want to get, which is 150 as well. And that's actually all that we have to do for this string. So essentially, this is kind of a cool string that Roblox allows us to use. Essentially, we're using one of their systems, and then we're specifying the type that we want to get of the thumbnail, which is actually the game icon. Then we specify the ID of where we want to actually get the image from. Then we give them the universe ID. Then we use W and H to specify the dimensions of the image that we want to get, so we can specify the width and the height, which we're saying is 150 by 150. Cool. So now that we've actually set up the GUI, the next thing we need to do is set up what happens when a player touches the portal. So we can do that by saying primary part.touch :connect, create an anonymous function inside of here. And this anonymous function, of course, is going to have a single parameter, which is going to be called other part, and that's going to be of the part type. Then what we're going to want to try to do is anytime this primary part is touch, we're going to try to get a player from the other part who touched this. So we're going to create a variable called player, and now to get the player from the other part who touched this, what we're going to do is use a method of the player service, which is called getPlayerFromCharacter. And what we're going to want to pass through to here is the other part.parent. Because if a player's character actually touches something, in order to get the character from that part, we need to get their parent from that other part. and that would actually be the character of the player. And then if we actually do get a player from that part, what we're going to do is teleport them to the other game. So we'll go ahead and use the teleport service, and we'll use the teleport async method of the service. And now we need to pass through the place ID as well as the players that we want to teleport. So we'll go ahead and pass through the place ID. Then to pass through the players, what we need to do is just quickly create a table right here, and then we'll insert the player into that table just like that. And with that being said, we fully finished creating this function right here. So let's go ahead and use it inside of the setup portals function. We'll go ahead and call local.setupPortal, and then we'll go ahead and pass through the portal model to that function. And now we finished creating the setup portals function. The last thing that we want to do is go ahead and create a shared function, which is going to be called onStart. And because of how the module framework actually works, whenever we add in an onStart function to the shared table of any of our services or controllers, this function will automatically be called and run one time when the script starts up for its very first time. That's why we call it onStart. So when the script starts up for the very first time, what are we going to want to do? Well, we are simply going to want to go ahead and set up all the portals. So let's go ahead and call setup portals just like that. Cool. And now that we've done that, let's go to our game and actually test this out. So once we hop into our game, if we get a little bit closer to the portals, we can see that we do become in range of the Billboard GUIs, and we can now see visit, and then the game icon is displayed right there, and we can see visit and the game icon is displayed right there as well. Now, if we were to walk through any of these portals, we will actually see an error in the output because we're actually not able to teleport to another game inside of Roblox Studio. But now remember, because we did actually publish this game, we can go onto the Roblox website, play the game in the Roblox player, and test it out there. So let's go ahead and do that. Cool. So once we actually get into the game inside of Roblox, we can see that if we walk through either of these portals, we will be teleported over to that game. So now I've been teleported to Skibidi Tower Defense just like that. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for this episode. As always, if you did enjoy, make sure you smash the like button. Please leave a comment down below letting other people know that it did work. I and they really do appreciate it. It helps everyone out. And as usual, if you want to gain access to all the scripts and the game file that we made during this episode, as well as a ton of other assets, you can visit MonzterDev or my Patreon, link down below in the description to both of these. You can gain access to a ton of assets to easily create your next Roblox game, as well as support me in creating all the content that I create. Anyways, with all that being said, I hope that you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.